Ann Bryant, who has a story that is a shocking, startling. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to let her tell her story, but there's a book behind the story. The book is called In My Defense, and she has a story to tell that at the end of the story there is hope and redemption and the saving power of Jesus Christ. But we got to go through the story to get there. Leigh Ann Bryant, welcome to today's Issues.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we are very glad to have you. The name of the book is In My Defense, and it's published by Authentic Media. Just came out a couple of months ago. Our listeners no doubt don't know anything about you, so tell us a little bit about your story, because it's a story that will be almost, I think, hard in some ways for our listeners to believe, but it needs to be told. So tell us about yourself and your background.
Well, I guess I grew up as anyone else that just wants to be loved and accepted, and somehow I always seem to fall short of expectations and never seemed to measure up, and just wanted so desperately to find unconditional love. I knew my mother loved me, but I figured if I messed up enough that I would lose her love, and so I began a quest of acceptance and love from friends and boys, and in places that I had no business going, doing things I had no business doing. And, I would find momentary happiness through those things, but in the end it would leave me feeling even more unloved and unworthy. And I developed a very serious case of codependency where it was just all about fixing others and making others happy and pleasing others and doing what I could to bring joy to others, even at my own expense. And I had this need to be needed and fix people, fix things.
Leigh Ann Bryant is our guest. I'm Tim Wildman with Dr. Ray Pritchard, and Leigh Ann's we're going to get more into her story, which is in her book. It's her new book called In My Defense. In My Defense. And it's subtitled An Unlikely Romance, A Deadly Gunshot, and a Young Widow's Road to Redemption. So you sort of describing there, Leigh Ann, your personal life, your situation. What age are we talking about here? What years are you describing?
Well, I guess my teen years mostly is when I really started acting out and doing things I shouldn't do, and then being afraid that if, people I loved, like my mom, knew what I was doing, that I would lose her love, and it just made me want to find love other places even more. And I just had this yearning for this unconditional love. I felt empty inside. I grew up an unbeliever. We went to church maybe for Christmas and Easter. So I had no idea about God or anything.
I don't know. It's up to you how much you want to tell us. What all were you involved in?
Well, it was kind of that, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll mentality, where it was just going to parties and drinking alcohol, experimenting with different kinds of drugs, mostly pot, but there was a few others that I would try, and acting out with boys.
I got you.
Yeah, thinking that would get me love.
Right.
And at some point, Leigh Ann, you got married. Tell us about the man. I mean, you called him Mr. Right. You thought he was perfect for you. Tell us about how you met him and what your expectations were when you got married.
Well, he was somebody who was gorgeous and charming and made me feel so good inside. And when I first met him, I was actually afraid of him because I was a nursing student and he was my patient, which, the Florence Nightingale kind of thing where the nurse falls for the patient. But my patient wasn't in the hospital for like an appendectomy. He was there in a psychiatric hospital with several disturbing diagnoses. But he was somehow able, as a nursing student, I was required to follow him around and get to know him and ask a lot of questions. And in all that time of getting to know him, what I came to decide was that he was somebody who wanted to be happy and normal very much, but he'd had this horrendous childhood that had all sorts of traumas and had left him a mess. And so I felt like all the things he'd done, he could get past it. He just needed the love of a good woman, and I guess there was that, I had that need to be needed. I got worth from helping people. That's where I got my worth. And I guess some deep-seated need in me was kind of like, okay, he's the messed up person you've ever met, and if you can fix him, you'll truly be worthy of receiving that unconditional love that he would have to love me if I fix him, kind of thing. And he had a diagnosis of antisocial personality, which is a psychopath. But of course, I was, young and knew everything, and so I felt like I knew him better than the doctors who'd given him that diagnosis, and that just had to be wrong. And he also had a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. But, there's medication for that. And when he was on his medication, he didn't have the mood swings, the mania, the depression. And, he kind of presented it like, look, I've done all these dumb things and made all these poor choices, as I had done as well. But he would say, I'm ready to move past this. I'm ready to grow up. I don't want to hang out with my old friends. I don't want to do these crimes anymore. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to do the drugs and the drinking. I want to just be happy and normal. And, I need you to help me do that. And so our kind of more like a nurse-patient relationship that became more of a friendship, and me trying to help him because I helped him overcome several hurdles, and that made me feel so worthy. And then he was able to manipulate me into this now an intimate romantic relationship. And then once I crossed that line, it was the way he loved me, the way he treated me. It was so intoxicating. I had never, ever been loved that way before. He said all the things I'd always wanted to hear. He made me feel whole and complete. He made me feel full and loved. And so my expectation was that I would help him to be the happy, normal person that he always wanted to be, and that we would have this very loving relationship that would last until we were old and gray together.
So, so really, you go into the marriage with a little bit of the missionary impulse. You're gonna really, he's a fixer-upper.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women go into marriage that way, I suppose, and then they see the flaws, but they're going to help this guy and make him better and so on. And then you get intoxicated because he's saying, with love, because he's saying all the right things. Then you get married, and eventually things started to change. How long after you got married when another side began to come out?
Well, the other side, it's hard to really quantify that because abuse, almost always has this kind of pattern where it starts off very mild and just escalates as time goes on, so that the victim begins to accept more. They get desensitized to it, and the abuser kind of keeps pushing the limits. And so it started off with just this out-of-control jealousy. He was so jealous, but he presented it to me in a way of, if I didn't love you so much, I wouldn't care, but because I love you so much, I don't want you to wear that dress because guys might think certain things, or I don't want you to go to this place, or, it was just because I love you. And so I would think, wow, he must really love me to be so concerned and to be so jealous. And so I took it almost in a flattering way that he was so jealous. But his jealousy, came out in two forms. One of them was a very controlling behaviors where it was, yeah, you can't wear that dress, or I don't want you to hang out with these friends, or I don't want you to go there. And if you loved me, you wouldn't want to hang out with your friends. You'd want to spend time with me. And where are you at, and who are you with? And the third degree, if I came home or was 5 minutes late for something. And so he was very, very controlling. And also the jealousy came out in anger. So when he would have these irrational thoughts of me messing around or some guy flirting with me, he would get very angry, and he would yell and scream and call me names and slam doors and throw things or break something. And but in abuse, there's a cycle. Abuse has a cycle, and it's the tension building phase is first, and then there's the explosive phase where the abuse occurs. And whether it's calling you names as verbal abuse or emotional abuse or physical, that's the explosive phase. And then it's followed by what's called the honeymoon phase, where they're so sorry and they're so loving, and they make these promises. And, you know, I had never experienced that honeymoon phase before, and it was so overwhelming and wonderful that it was like, okay, I didn't like that behavior that he did. I didn't like him calling me those names, but the honeymoon phase was so much better that it was almost worth it, you know. But as time went on, the abuse escalated, and as the abuse escalated and it started coming more frequently, lasting longer. The honeymoon phase was lasting shorter and not being as wonderful, and and so the abuse escalated to now he's not just slamming a door, he's slamming me against the wall, or he's not just throwing something, he's throwing it at me or breaking it on me.
Well,
and
Leigh Ann, excuse me for interrupting you. I just want to tell folks who are just now joining us, we've got about 10 minutes left on the program. We're talking to Leigh Ann Bryant, Bryant. Her book is called In My Defense. It's a true story. She's sharing some of it with us today, but all the details are in the book. It's subtitled An Unlikely Romance, A Deadly Gunshot, and a Young Widow's Road to Redemption. Leigh Ann, we got 10 minutes left, so I hate to ask you to, move along here, but tell us what happened, and then whatever else you want to tell us for the next 10 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. It's there's so much to it,
I
and
know.
it is all in the book. But the abuse escalated to the point where it was daily threats on my life. You know, if you leave me, I'm going to kill you. If you cheat on me, I'll kill you and I'll kill him. And then the threats became even more real when he would now sit on me and hold a knife to my throat while he threatened me. And I just was so afraid. I was so afraid, and I felt so alone. And there's no one I can turn to. There's no one who can help me. It's all up to me. I have to fix this. I can just love him more. I can be a better wife. I can make this okay. But nothing I did made it okay. And he just, the abuse kept escalating to the point where now he began threatening our son's life. And that's when I thought, I can't do this. I have to find a way to get control of the situation. When he gets out of control, I have to find a way to be in control, to snap him out of it so he'll go off and calm down. And the only thing I could think of that would get him to pay attention was to get a gun. And in my mind's eye, it was, okay, he's going to be out of control, and if he sees this gun, he sees me pointing a gun and saying, get out, then he'll get out, he'll leave, and then he'll go calm down and everything will be okay. But one night, it did. It got so out of control, and I was so afraid for my life and for our son's life. He was threatening our son, threatening me, and this time he wasn't just holding a knife to my throat. He was breaking the skin and causing me to bleed, and many times doing that. And I knew that this was it. And so I got the gun, but when I pointed the gun at him and told him to leave, it wasn't what I expected. He didn't snap out of it and leave. He tried to get the gun from me. And in the struggle, the gun went off. And I can't even say how the events occurred. in what order. There was so much adrenaline pumping through me and so much fear, and everything happened so fast.